Ever get that feeling? I know when something complex, suddenly just clicks like a light bulb, just pops on.
Yeah, that little thrill of sudden understanding.
Exactly. That's what we chase here on the Deep Dive. We take some really fascinating material, and today it's real unique, and we try to pull out the most interesting bits for you.
And today we're stepping into, well, it's a poetry collection, Manuel del Valle Colón's Omnibus Poetry XX Fencing, FFFF.pdf. And it's not just poetry. It's this surprising mix of foil fencing, like the really technical sport, and these deep dives into human connection.
Interdependence, longing.
Right, duality, even the sort of asymmetries you find in relationships.
It's fascinating. What grabbed me straight away was how he weaves together the specific language of foil fencing. You know, the French terms, the actual moves of these bigger, almost philosophical ideas. And author Manuel de Valle y Colón, he dedicated this book to the Brooklyn Technical High School fencing team. He was the manager there. So, okay, who is this person connecting fencing and, well, the human heart?
Well, Manuel de Valle y Colón's life is as layered as the poetry suggests. Born in New York City, 1948, grew up in the housing projects in East Harlem.
Okay.
He graduated from Brooklyn Tech class of '66 and was involved early on with Aspira. He worked with some pretty key figures there like Antonia Pantoja. That shows a kind of early commitment to community.
Aspira, yeah, that name definitely rings a bell for community work. So right from the start, he was involved in significant stuff. How did that shape him later on?
Well, it must have laid some groundwork, right? His academic journey was also pretty remarkable. Yale's transitional year program, then Wesleyan, studied abroad in Spain, a summer at the University of Puerto Rico, and then graduated from Princeton in '71.
Wow, quite a path.
And while he was at Princeton, he actually founded the Latino organization there. He also started one of the first seminars in the Ivy League on Puerto Rican history and politics. You see this consistent drive, this need to build connections and understanding.
Yeah, definitely someone who sees the gaps and tries to bridge them.
Yeah.
Didn't his senior thesis make waves outside of just the university?
It really did. It was called A History of the Puerto Rican Student and Public Education, 1945-1969. Apparently, it was so insightful that a chapter ended up in a memo for Senator Jacob Javits, and it was even presented at a U.S. Civil Rights Commission hearing.
No kidding.
Yeah, and the Puerto Rican Legal Defense and Education Fund used it in the big Asprevi Board of Education case. So his academic work was always kind of pointed towards making a real-world difference.
So definitely not just theory. It had real teeth. And he kept pursuing that blend of, intellect and action.
Exactly. He went on to Yale Law, graduated in '74. Interesting aside, his classmates included Clarence Thomas and Lonnie Guinier.
Wow.
Even during law school, he kept teaching Puerto Rican history, founded the undergraduate Puerto Rican group Despierta Boricua, and then his early legal career put him right into that Aspira case, fighting for bilingual education. That commitment is just a clear thread running through everything.
From community work to law. I mean, it's such a diverse background. It really makes you think how all these different parts of his life might feed into his poetry.
That's a really interesting question, isn't it? I mean, his legal career was long and varied. Department of Labor, teaching law, a fellowship at the London School of Economics, became an arbitrator.
Right.
He was even chief administrative of the New York State Division of Human Rights, first Puerto Rican to hold that position, and later a chief administrative law judge for Social Security in Puerto Rico. So how does that structured world of law connect with the equally structured but maybe more personal world of foil fencing in his poems?
That's the pivot point, right? How does this very specific sport, foil fencing, become a way to talk about connection, longing, all these abstract things?
It's fascinating because the actual dynamics of foil fencing give you this amazing framework. Think about the basics, the French terms. En garde, that moment of readiness.
Right.
Marcher, advance. Retreat, retreat. Fente, the lunge or attack. Parry, defense. Riposte, the counterattack.
Yeah.
Each word is an action, but it implies a reaction, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a dialogue.
Exactly. That interdependence between the fencers where one move almost demands another, it perfectly mirrors that kind of intricate dance you have in relationships, the give and take.
So the language itself sets that stage. It's not just technical jargon.
Not at all. And the duality in fencing, attack, defense, advance, retreat, it echoes that push and pull we feel maybe in longing or just navigating complex connections. And think about asymmetry.
How so?
like a parry followed by a riposte. One action answers another. They're linked, but they're not the same. It reflects how, even in close relationships, our experiences, our responses, they're connected but still uniquely ours. Creates this kind of beautiful, functional imbalance.
Huh. So the technical stuff isn't just background noise. It's actually giving a language for these emotional landscapes.
Yeah.
What are some specific images or fencing concepts that really stand out in the poems?
Oh, the poems are full of them, and they become really symbolic. The on guard position, that balanced readiness, it turns into a metaphor for facing any challenge in life with focus.
Okay.
And the umpire's calls, "Êtes-vous prêt? Allez, halt. Ready, go, stop." They sound like the calls to action and the necessary pauses we all face. Even the fencing mask, the masque d'escrime, he describes it as shedding light, emphasizing that intense focus needed in any meaningful interaction, not just blocking vision.
Interesting take on the mask. And the movements like marché, font, how do they move beyond the fencing strip?
They become stand-ins for our choices, our actions in life. The way time can feel like it stretches or shrinks in a fencing bout, the calculation, the execution needed for a touché, a successful hit, that mirrors how we pursue our own goals. Moments of intense focus, then decisive action.
Right, like planning a project or making a big decision.
Exactly. And the strategy, trying to guess your opponent's next move, responding with that parry riposte, it's a direct parallel to the strategies we use every day, consciously or not.
He even describes a match happening in a hotel lobby. That sounds like a really specific, almost jarring image.
It is. And that poem is great because he gets super specific about the piece d'escrime, the strip, 14 meters by 2 meters. He details the scoring. 5 touches for a bout, 3 bouts for a match, and that crucial minute prioritaire if there's a tie.
A sudden death minute.
Right. Putting this intense rule-bound thing in an unexpected place like a hotel lobby, it sort of highlights how we have these focus encounters, often under pressure, even within everyday settings. It's like taking the intensity of a negotiation and putting it somewhere mundane to show the underlying dynamics.
It's like saying life is just a series of these focused bouts within certain boundaries, maybe.
That seems to be part of it. And he even talks about how knowing fencing French lets you communicate with different coaches, different opponents. It's like the jargon in any field, right? It creates understanding within that group.
Yeah, it's a shared language.
There's also a cool metaphor comparing the fencer to a windmill, the opponent to the wind, really emphasizing that en garde stance and the sudden burst of the font, and those magic words, en garde, êtes-vous prêt, allez. They become more than just commands. They're about squaring up to a challenge, acknowledging the moment, and committing to action.
And the mask, you mentioned he found it off-putting at first. How does that change?
Yes, initially. But then he reflects on how the mask hides the face but demands focus through the eyes. Kind of like the masks we wear in life, different roles, different situations. And he observes that even without the electric scoring jacket in life, it often feels like someone is keeping score, that our actions matter, they have weight. There's also this idea of life being a rematch, suggesting challenges aren't one-offs. You need focus, but you also need to remember past victories, learn from losses.
So moving away a bit from the direct fencing stuff, the collection also gets more philosophical, more abstract.
Definitely. There are these fascinating poems where inanimate objects talk, like 2 chairs observing people, watching time pass. It gives this really unusual, detached viewpoint on us, on the human condition.
Like seeing ourselves from the outside. That's clever.
And then there's advice woven through, guidance on living with grace and resilience. Carry yourself well, look forward, value steadfastness, appreciate art and beauty. Simple sounding, but profound in context. He touches on trusting your gut, intuition, but also warns against getting too caught up in other people's lives. There's emphasis on hard work, but also on needing support systems, and this really empowering idea that the universe kind of rewards creation, rewards putting things out there.
Sounds like a really well-rounded perspective on navigating things. And what about those deep emotional connections you mentioned at the start?
Oh, those poems are incredibly potent. There's that feeling of finding yourself reflected in someone else, that deep resonance, the sheer consuming nature of love, and just the basic human need for connection.
How does he capture that?
He uses powerful imagery. Nakedness as vulnerability, as being truly yourself. The feeling of the world just disappearing when you're holding someone. The collapsing universe in a lover's arms. The idea of a kiss that feels like it lasts forever.
Those are strong images, yeah. They really capture that intensity.
For sure. There's one poem describing a long hug, hugging each other for an eternity, a whole 10 minutes. It just perfectly gets that feeling of shared energy, of being totally interconnected in that moment.
Mm.
And then some verses get even more abstract, exploring how reality and dreams mix or humanity's place relative to the stars, suggesting these connections go even deeper, maybe beyond what we normally perceive.
It's like he's mapping connections everywhere, physical, emotional, cosmic even. He also includes some really personal bits, questions, and reflections.
Yes, definitely. There's a section that feels very intimate, almost like fragments of thought. He's thinking about buying that first fencing foil for his high school team, the feeling of being lost in Manhattan, just noticing the physical details of a foil. The idea that holding a foil could somehow fulfill a dream, and this almost romantic image of high school fencers as, like, Zorro figures.
That links right back to the dedication to his own time with the Brooklyn Tech team.
Exactly. And there's a really moving poem about fencing with that first foil, fencing your heart out. You feel the passion, the dedication of being young and committed to something.
Mm.
He also puts love and joy right next to darker things like faceless robbers, but there's this sense of overcoming them, almost like using skillful moves. He mentions ninja moves and fencing to disarm threats, to limit their power.
So finding agency, maybe even triumph, through that lens of discipline and skill learned from fencing.
So it feels, yeah, precisely.
Wow. This has been a really fascinating deep dive into Manuel del Valle Colón's Omnibus poetry XXX. It's just remarkable how he's managed to weave together something as specific as foil fencing with his own incredibly rich life story and these really profound thoughts on connection, longing, just navigating life.
Yeah. It really shows how the focused discipline, the specific language of an activity, in this case fencing, can become this incredibly powerful tool. A way to understand and talk about much bigger human experiences, you know? The strategy, the art of it gives you this unique lens on our inner lives and how we relate to each other.
So maybe something for you, the listener, to think about. How might the focused discipline, the strategic thinking in some activity, well, maybe something seemingly niche, how might that offer surprising insights into your own life's challenges and connections? It really makes you consider where you might find these deep metaphors, this wisdom, in places you wouldn't expect. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.